It is in. The Pittsburgh Steelers have released their depth chart of the 2025 season of all the players who made the 53-man roster. But first, before I get into each position, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right into it. So, to start off on offense, the Pittsburgh Steelers have named quarterback Aaron Rodgers as a starter and have listed Mason Rudolph as the backup and Skylar Thompson as the third quarterback. And obviously, Will Howard, he's on injured reserve. This was all but certain. We knew this was going to happen, and it's just listed straightforward on the Steelers depth chart. Now, moving over to the running back position, because Jalen Warren is listed as the starting running back. Obviously, he was the backup for many years behind Najee Harris, but now he gets the full-time starter job in Pittsburgh in his first season. So, you look at who the backup is, and it's listed as Kenneth Gainwell, and the third running back is Caleb Johnson. Obviously, these two could be interchangeable when the season actually comes along, and because Caleb Johnson is a rookie, you kind of expected that the veteran Kenneth Gainwell would be listed ahead of him in the depth chart, and he is. So Kenneth is number 2, and Caleb is number 3. Now, looking at the fullback position, Connor Hayward is the only fullback listed on this roster, so he is the number 1 fullback on the team. Now, let's look at the tight end position, because this one's a little bit interesting. When you look at the first name listed on the depth chart, the name is Pat Freiermuth, but it has "or" next to it. That means Jonnu Smith is listed as also their number 1 tight end. So it's Pat Freiermuth or Jonnu Smith as the number 1 guy. And the backup, which is going to be listed as a number 2 tight end, which obviously in this case is number 3 because he's a third tight end, it's Darnell Washington. So Darnell Washington is the number 3 tight end on this roster, and Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith are both starters. Now, moving over to the wide receiver position, because this one's a little bit interesting as well in terms of the backups. So the starting wide receivers are DK Metcalf listed as a number 1, and Calvin Austin III listed as the number 2 receiver. We knew this was going to be the case. It was the case in the initial depth chart as well. Even though Calvin Austin has been injured the whole offseason basically, he's still the number 2 receiver. But the backups are a little bit interesting because behind DK Metcalf on the depth chart, the name is Scotty Miller. And behind Calvin Austin on the depth chart, the name is Roman Wilson. So you could look at that as Scotty Miller being the 3rd receiver and Roman Wilson being the number 4 receiver on this team. And then Ben Skornick is listed as the number 5. So those are the wide receivers and what number they are going into the season. Now, moving over to the trenches, and that is the offensive line. This one is straightforward, what we've been expecting, and that is left tackle Broderick Jones, left guard is Isaac Seumalo, center is Zach Frazier, right guard is Mason McCormick, and right tackle is Troy Fautanu. Now, looking at those guys' backups, the backup left tackle is Kelvin Anderson, the backup left guard is Spencer Anderson, the backup center is Ryan McCullum, the backup right guard is Max Sharping, the backup right tackle is Andres Pete. So, that is the entire offense depth chart going into this season for the initial 53-man roster. Obviously, changes will be made as the season goes along if we get new players or if players get injured, but initially, that's who it is for the 53-man roster. Now, looking at the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to stick with the trenches. Let's start with the defensive line and the edge rushers first. So looking at defensive tackle, the number 1 guy is obviously Cameron Hayward. He still wants that new contract, and we're not certain he's going to play for sure, but he's been practicing, and he's still listed as the number 1 defensive tackle. His backup is listed as Isaiah Loudermilk, and then the 3rd is Ezi Otamiya. So, moving over to nose tackle, and nose tackle is Keanu Benton listed as the number 1, and Daniel Ikule listed as number 2, and Logan Lee listed as number 3. Hopefully this is a bounce back season for Keanu Benton. He was solid last year, don't get me wrong, but we need to see more from him. Now, moving over to defensive end, the starter number 1 guy is Derek Harmon. Even though he is injured and he is out for week 1, he's still listed as number 1 on the depth chart. His backup is Yaya Black. So Yaya Black has performed really well this offseason in camp and the preseason, and now he may move into a starter role with Derek Harmon being injured. But those are the number 1 and number 2 guys for the defense line. Moving over to the edge rushers, left outside linebacker, number 1 guy is TJ Watt, and his backup is Jack Sawyer. So obviously that means that those 2 guys will be rushing off the left side, but TJ Watt expects to move around the defense line this season and move and rush from a different position every now and then. So the right outside linebacker is Alex Highsmith, and his backup is Nick Herbig. So those guys will be rushing off the right side, as expected. But even though Nick Herbig is listed as the backup right outside linebacker, he usually comes in first for either TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith, whatever one is taking a rest. So I don't believe that he will just be the right side. I believe he'll be the backup to both those guys first. Now, moving over to inside linebacker. And left inside linebacker is Patrick Queen, and his backup is Malik Harrison. Looking at right inside linebacker, the starter is Peyton Wilson, his backup is Cole Holcomb, and then the third is Carson Bruner. Those are the inside linebackers for your Pittsburgh Steelers this season. Now, moving over to the cornerbacks. Looking at the left cornerback, it is Darius Slay as the starter. And his backup on the left side will be Brandon Eccles. Looking at the right cornerback, it is listed as Joey Porter Jr., and the backup to him is Braden Eccles once again. So Braden Eccles is the backup to both the cornerback spots on each side. Now, looking at the nickel cornerback spot, it will be Jalen Ramsey. He is listed as a starter, and he does not have a backup listed on the depth chart. Now, let's look at the free safety position. The starting free safety will be Juan Thornhill, and his backup will be Miles Killebrew. So obviously this was different from the initial depth chart, which obviously had Minkah Fitzpatrick on it, but he's now been traded. So now you look at who the starting free safety is going into the season, and it's Juan Thornhill. And looking at the strong safety position, Deshaun Elliott will be the starter, and his backup will be Chuck Clark. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have a really experienced group at the safety position, and hopefully that pays dividends for them, because maybe the top end talent is not as there as it once was, but the experience could really matter. And hopefully that pays dividends. You look at Deshaun Elliott, he's been a top guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers since being added last offseason, and he's been really, really good. So he could really hold that group together. And it's a little bit interesting going back to the cornerback position, because Joey Porter Jr. will be on the right side and Darius Slay will be on the left. We expected Jalen Ramsey to be in the slot. He was also named basically the starter of a guy who's going to follow the top tier wide receiver on each team. So I wonder how that's going to go. Mike Tomlin said he will follow guys. So how is he going to follow guys if he's listed as a nickel cornerback? That means maybe one of the other guys will have to slide into nickel when Jalen goes to the outside. But we're going to have to wait and see with that. And that is the defensive depth chart going into this season. Now, you look at the special teams group, and the starting punter is Carlos Waitman. The starting kicker is Chris Boswell. The starting long snapper is Christian Kuntz. The holder will be Carlos Waitman. The kickoff returner, listed as a starter, is Kenneth Gainwell, and his backup is Caleb Johnson. But there's usually both those guys on the field at the same time, so that's not really a backup. Both those guys will be starters. Looking at the punt returner, the starter will be Kelvin Austin III, and his backup will be Scotty Miller as the punt returner. So that one is a little bit little bit tricky because Kelvin Austin will be taking a leap in the wide receiver production and him being on the field a lot as a wide receiver. Maybe you expect a different guy to be the punt returner because of that, because you don't want your second wide receiver to be put in danger with injury on a special teams that's high injury rate. But he's still listed as a punt returner. He's great at that aspect. He got a punt return touchdown last season, and he sticks it out and wins that job. So that does it. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers special team starters going into the season as well, listed on the depth chart. So this is going to be a fun season of 2025, and these are the guys we're going to ride with all season long. So that's the end of this video, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. On each of these position groups, is there any shockers? Would you have switched anything in terms of who's the starter, who's the backups? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about the roster we have and the depth chart that was announced. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports. Everything surrounding this team, I have you covered. I covered all offseason, and now with the season starting shortly, I'll have you covered all season long as well. No worries. This is the best spot for Pittsburgh Steelers football. So stay tuned, like, comment, and subscribe. And until the next video tomorrow, I'll see you guys all later. That's it for me. I'm out. Peace.